Hey there, it's PK Beats, and I'm too lazy to write an introduction, so Solaris gives me a fun little fact regarding King Dedede's Gordo and Shulk's Backslash. That is, apparently Gordo has a back hitbox, and is thus able to be backslashed. Compare the sound effects from these two hits. Backslash! It's pretty clear that the one that hits from behind Gordo is way stronger based on how much meatier the sound is, which is just how the move functions, you know, it's a backslash. It's interesting that Gordo of all things has a back though. It looks symmetrical, right? Like looking at it here, you wouldn't be able to tell where its back is, which I guess doesn't really imply the lack of a back. But this paired with how Gordo spins when it's in use, you'd expect its back placement to be constantly changing if it exists at all, right? But not quite. The back position is just determined by whatever half of the Gordo's general model gets hit. And in this sense, it's pretty easy to see how it works. Its front is the direction that Dedede sent the Gordo, so its back will be facing Dedede when it gets sent out. Now in terms of damage, it probably feels like the Gordo should be stronger now, but this isn't really how the move works. There's a lot of variance in how much damage the Gordo will do when sent back, but generally how strong your move is doesn't affect Gordo's return strength much, if at all. That is for normal moves. It seems for reflector moves the strength will then get way bigger, which is why the home run bat sends the Gordo back to deal over 50%, and Nessa's bat deals double the normal damage, but a fully charged Ore Club swing has the same Gordo dealing damage as any other move. So it's not like there seems to be a really good reason to backslash Gordo, though I guess the way it gets launched is really weird. Usually when you hit Gordo, the knockback it takes acts like normal, going in the direction opposite you hit it from, like, you know, most things obviously. But when you backslash Gordo, it just goes backwards for whatever reason. So I guess it's a good mix-up, maybe? I mean, I figured most people would be more surprised that you're even using backslash than the fact that the Gordo is getting sent the opposite way, but whatever works for you. The idea of the Gordo, this spherical spinning object, having a consistent back hitbox, did get me wondering about other things in the game. To get the obvious ones out of the way, Nana, or whatever your secondary ice climber is, has a back hitbox. And the same is true for LOONA. Each of their back hitboxes are intuitive, just, you know, wherever is behind where they're looking, obviously. Though hitting the backslash on these two has more of a mechanical purpose, since KOing them is helpful and requires damage or knockback. Also, apparently the backslash sound effect will still play even if you hit an invincible opponent. So yeah, there's that. But the more I tested other things, the more I realized how many things actually have a back hitbox. It could be like Wario's bike, which is intuitive in that its back is where its back half was at that time. But other things could be more like King Dedede's Gordo, in that its back was just based on which half of it you hit, no matter what. A good example of this is Snake's Nikita. Like the Gordo, slashing the side opposite it was initially sent results in a proper backslash. But considering you can have more control over this projectile, we can see just how this works. Basically, you'd expect the back half of the Nikita here to be based on the base of the missile, right? And here it is. But if we have Snake maneuver the missile to go around, if we attack the base here, it's not a backslash. That's because even though we attacked what looks like its back, we still attacked it from the left side, which is its front. Likewise, if he maneuvers it over and we attack it head on, it'll be a backslash, because we attacked it from the right. Now this is when I decided to test items, and at first things were making sense. I spawned in a crate from here and its back was on the left side, meaning it was facing right. This is how the Gordo and Nikita worked too. Which half was the front or the back was determined by where Dedede or Snake respectively were facing. It makes sense. But after testing more, I saw that the crate's back half was always its left half, no matter which direction I was facing when spawning it in or which half of the stage I was on. If I pick it up, turn around, and drop it, then its back is on its right half. But then the blast box that spawned after breaking the crate had its back on its left half. So I guess even though I'm the one spawning it, the crate has no real origin, and thus it just defaults to facing to the right. And this is how all of the items worked from my testing. Picking up the item will cause their back half to be changed, determined by your position, but ultimately it defaults to the left half. This is especially interesting for some items like the soccer ball, which can't be picked up. No matter how many times or how many different ways I hit it, its back half was always its left half. So I suppose if you want to properly backslash the soccer ball, you have to hit its left side. Also, the weird direction that the Gordo got sent translates into items too. like the rolling crate, the barrel, or the green shell. I guess that's just sort of baked into the move for whatever reason. And of course, since this is all in training mode, I had to make sure that this was true in an actual match. And yes, the items that naturally spawn also always default to having their backs on their left half. I don't think backslashing items is usually too important, but this is still a really interesting mechanic to know. Okay, I could spend the entire video talking about how backslash interacts with various aspects of the game, but I've already spent about a third of the video talking about this. And I'm sure we want some variety, right? So let's move on. Before I do that, of course, I've got to ask you to think about subscribing maybe. If you've liked what you've seen so far, or like my channel at all, just think about it, just for a little bit. Alright, moving on. This tweet from Tariq Was Taken talks about a really interesting fact regarding Mythra and weight. Now, in my last video, like my last actual facts video, I went over the topic of weight quite a bit. It can have a few functions, but primarily it determines how much knockback you take in this game. It's why characters like Pichu, who weigh very little, will be KO'd way earlier than characters like Bowser, who weigh a lot. Pretty basic stuff, right? But the thing is, Mythra's neutral special ignores weight. At the ledge, fully charged, it'll start KOing Pichu at about 48%, and won't KO them at 45%. The exact same thing is true for Bowser. KO is at about 48%, not quite at 45%. Considering these two make up the exact opposite spectrums of the weight scale, it should be pretty clear to see that their weights are now no longer being taken into consideration, when normally there's about a 20% difference in when something will KO them. I find it very interesting that Mythra's Lightning Buster of all things ignores weight. It makes sense for some moves to ignore it. This is especially prominent in multi-hit moves, where there's set weight where the knockback is identical for everyone, which allows the entire move to connect the same way for everyone. It'd be kinda weird if multi-hit moves work differently for different characters. And quick note, this is different from set knockback, where the knockback value is the same for everyone and at all percents, which affects moves like Luigi's down taunt and... apparently not many others. I guess they kinda gutted this feature coming into this game compared to the other games. Anyways, having a move with real knockback ignore the factor of weight is really interesting, but it seems like the type of thing that would be more, I don't know, intentionally mechanical, right? Like it's a unique quirk of the move. I would then ask, so why specifically Lightning Buster? And, well, I am curious about that, but it's slightly misleading because Lightning Buster isn't the only move with this feature. Bowser's up special also ignores weight. In this specific method, it KOs at around 175% here for both Bowser and Pichu. Just like before, characters of completely opposite weight types are getting KO'd and thus launched at the same ramp up rate. This move isn't really meant for KOing as much as it is for racking up damage, so it's less impactful, but still weight is ignored. The interesting thing is that there doesn't seem to be a lot recorded about this. The idea of weight independence for moves isn't completely new, like I mentioned before, but it's usually thought about for things like either multi-hit connector moves, or moves that stun, like say Corrin's neutral special, which is also weight independent and thus KOs Pichu and Bowser at the same threshold. Apparently the weight here defaults to 100 according to the wiki. And for comparison, that means they're considered to be the same weight as someone like Cloud, who is slightly skewed towards the heavier half of the cast, but still somewhat average. So yeah, it's good to note that moves like Corrin's neutral special will also be weight independent, but I feel like moves like Bowser's Whirling Fortress and Mythra's Lightning Buster are different. They're moves that are sort of meant to be on their own rather than meant to connect to other moves, right? From a balancing standpoint, it is an interesting idea. It makes the move less effective than normal against lighter opponents, but more effective than normal against heavier opponents. It's just that the way it's implemented, what with how little it's referred to and the moves that it was chosen for, it almost feels unintentional. Now I'm not going to say that it was actually unintentional, but I think you get what I mean when I say that. So there's something you probably didn't know. Continuing off of that though, LuCasual in my Discord server followed up with an even more bizarre fact regarding set weight. If I show you these four characters, there's a chance you can think of some similarities between them, right? But the one I want to point out for today is their neutral air, which is very similar in almost all respects. That is, mostly. Remember how earlier I used Marth's neutral air to show off the set weight being used for multi-hits? It makes sense since the first hit is primarily meant to connect into the second one. So the first hit is weight independent as a connector hit, and the second hit is weight dependent because it's the launching hit. Again, the connector hit isn't set knockback, so eventually we can see that the sour spot will start KOing at around 760%. And this is for both Bowser and Pichu, and so on. while the sour launching hit will start KOing at around 225 for Bowser and 150 for Pichu, which is a massive 75% difference by the way. So I think we can all see how this system makes sense. Have set weight for the hit that won't be KOing opponents usually, and remove that set weight for the hit that will be KOing opponents. And that's how it works for the other neutral airs like it. All of them except for Roy. His and only his are reversed. It's kinda weird to test because the first hit of his neutral air is so weak that it doesn't even KO Bowser at 999%. But the thing is, it does KO Pichu at 999%. And even as quote-unquote low as 750%. So considering the move can even KO Bowser off the top platform of Battlefield at the highest possible percent, yet can KO Pichu on the ground just fine at 750, it's obvious that weight is being factored in. And yet, the second hit, which is meant to launch opponents, where weight is even more important, has set weight. The move KOs Pichu from here starting at around 155, and this same thing is true for Bowser. This would be just as interesting as the other examples of this on its own, but the fact that none of the other similar neutral airs work like this, especially Chrome's, is just so crazy to me. Their first hit being weight dependent is very unlikely to change things, as we've seen with how weak it is, but the fact that the second hit is actually weight independent actually kinda changes how strong the move is in certain matchups, and is just a really tasty fact. Oh yeah, speaking of tasty things, Krabs Will Not Die has given me a submission regarding the Maximum Tomato and Wario. That is, normally the Maximum Tomato heals 50% for anyone who grabs it, right? But if Wario uses his neutral special to eat it, he heals 75% instead. Now this is something I definitely hadn't known before anyone told me, but going into the tips, I actually saw that it was mentioned here too, so it doubly blows my mind that I didn't know about this before, but yeah. If Wario specifically chomps food items, he heals about 1.5 times more than normal. This applies to the Maximum Tomato as we saw before, but also the, well, you know, food items. But the thing is, it only seems to be what's considered food items, which I guess is literal food, obviously, and also the Maximum Tomato, but if you try this with the heart container, the amount that you heal will be the same. And the same is true for the fairy bottle. But you do heal more when eating something like Pac-Man's pellet. So there aren't many areas to test, as most items are non-healing and thus only heal Wario like 1%. But this is actually interesting, especially for the Maximum Tomato. An extra 25% of healing is really nice. All of this doesn't apply to Kirby though, the amount he heals is unchanged between normal eating and eating with his inhale. Though of course, if he inhales Wario and gets his chomp, then uses it on a Maximum Tomato, he will, like before, heal more. Interestingly, King Dedede also heals more when inhaling his food, with the same restrictions and such as Wario. Though this isn't mentioned in his tips, from what I've seen, so that's pretty interesting. So I guess the two greedy gluttons have a cool eating bonus, which is a really nice touch. Also, have you ever seen Mario's boxing ring title? Scoundrel with a fart of gold. I don't really have anything to add, I just think that's wonderful. Lastly, Mr. MC Man Dude tells me a weird interaction with the bunny hood and the jetpack. We've gone over this on the channel before, but if you jump around the same time the bunny hood falls off your head, you'll get a very slight boost. Apparently, if you time it really well, your jump will just get completely screwed up, almost like you hit your head on an invisible ceiling. But basically, this jump boost effect seems to be something applied briefly when the bunny hood goes away. But if you're wearing your jetpack and are in the air when this happens, not only do you get a huge boost in speed, but when you're falling when the jetpack needs to recharge, you'll actually float downwards. This is clearly different from how the jetpack normally works, which doesn't go up quickly, and when it needs to recharge, you fall at normal speed. But this is also not how it works with the bunny hood on. If you have the bunny hood on, the jetpack will still work as normal. This only comes into play if you're flying when the bunny hood falls off. Not only this, but you have to hold up on the analog stick for this to happen. If you hold down the jump button, none of this happens. For whatever reason, if you hold upwards, the weird boosted effect you get from the bunny hood despawning lingers with the jetpack, making you go up fast and fall down slow. And they say Ultimate doesn't have any movement tech. Anyhow, that'll be it for today's video. I'd like to thank my patrons Burbo, Raighne, BG, Daneplay, Feurolant, Parade Dino, Skully, Glaceon, Jigs, Keckothedragon, Meep, Skye, and Stan LOONA. So, how's everyone been? It's been a hot minute since my last Real Facts video, which is different for this channel. My Appreciating the Little Things video actually performed really well, and it got good reception. Considering its change of pace, I'd like to start incorporating them more into the channel as perhaps a series of sorts. I'm still figuring out how I'll tackle it, but in squeezing those types of videos into the schedule, I will be pushing back facts videos more. So like instead of every video being a random facts video which gets released like every 10 or 11 days, I'd be releasing a facts video like every 15 or so days, but with a chill commentary video in the middle. So in terms of raw net uploads, it's more, but under this plan you'd be waiting a little bit longer for each individual facts episode. So I'm still planning things out, but I just wanted to give you a peek into my mindset regarding all of that. I really hope anyone who's interested will continue supporting that more lax commentary video style, and supporting the channel as a whole, of course, and I'll try to keep uploading. So, stay kind, stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.